Hey, Mark, hi.
Hey,
Thanks a lot for time and for your very interesting presentation during the conference. Could you please share about your experience? I mean, in the field of network states and intentional communities, private cities, free cities. Just a couple of words about you and your background. I mean, how you came to this idea.
yeah, absolutely. So thanks for the question, by the way, and for the interview. Um, I grew up in Lebanon. I studied electrical and computer engineering there. I was always interested in back then what nationalism is, what defines a nation or a nation state. I did a lot of actual when I was studying in university, I did a lot of research about the topic and wrote like a bunch of papers and things like that. And then when I graduated, obviously realities hit you, right? So you start looking at, okay, you want to make some money, get a job, all of that. So I started in business consulting in the Middle East, mostly between Dubai, Saudi Arabia, that region. And I worked on a lot of projects related to smart grids, distributed solar systems, clean energy systems, demand side management, this whole kind of area, which was pretty interesting. But then at some point, I did a couple of projects in fintech, and that's how I got into Bitcoin. So that was like 2014. And given like my background in computer science and electrical engineering, but also my interest in nationalism and what it is and communities and all of that, I got into the rabbit hole of crypto, because crypto has like this interesting layer of like economics, but also incentives, and there is a little bit of a socio-political layer to it and governance and all of that. And so it happened around the time I was moving to New York to do my MBA. And as I was doing my MBA, literally like the first month, I went to an office visit to Consensus. Consensus is a blockchain company. And the founder of Consensus is Joe Lubin, who's the co-founder of Ethereum. And so I met Joe during that office visit, and he basically explained what Ethereum is and all of that. And I was really mind blown by that. So the next day I emailed him and I was like, I just want to be part of this. So how can I start? And I was still doing my MBA. And that's how it started. Like I started working part time and moved full time into crypto with Consensus after graduation, and did a lot of things around like using designing token models that incentivize coordination and collaboration, and thinking through how do you do those types of like tokenomics designs. We started a prediction markets startup, and the idea was to use prediction markets to crowdsource insights from communities to make decisions, or to use it as a data input to help make decisions. And so obviously it was early days of crypto, so like all these things were experiments. I think these things are a bit more mature today and quite interesting. And then after that, I decided to leave crypto for a bit on a full-time basis, just because I wanted to work on something a bit more, real world related, like solving an actual real world consumer problem. And crypto back then was not yet at that stage. So I got into electric mobility, and I basically ran a startup in North America that was about designing and manufacturing and leasing light electric vehicles to delivery companies like Amazon and Uber. So something completely unrelated to crypto and governance and communities and all of that. And then as I was doing that, I kept exploring things to do at the intersection of crypto and sustainability. And this led me to Fifth World. And the idea there was, well, a big part of being sustainable is being able to adopt distributed energy, water, food systems that are clean and net positive to the environment. And so there is a component of self-custody of atoms, right, and physical infrastructure. And then with my crypto background, it was about self-custody of, digital and data and assets. And so there was something at this intersection that was quite appealing to explore. And that's how, that's what we ended up working on. It's basically like, how do we, along with the decentralization at the digital level, how do we decentralize at the physical level? And then my experience early on in my career in terms of like working on smart grids and smart cities and thinking through how do you build new cities and all of that came in very handy as we were working on Fifth Word and VDAO, because then the dots like started to connect for me, in the sense that, well, there is a little bit of like energy and electrical and solar that goes into it. There's obviously a strong crypto component that goes into it. There's a big component around community and governance, and even like urban city design and city planning and things like that. And all of this came converge basically into what we're doing now at Driftwood.
Wonderful, very impressive journey, and
Thank you.
definitely, I am more than sure. I'm absolutely certain that the fifth world is going to make a very profound global success.
Thank you.
So, tell me, how do you think the fifth world will influence on the like a global dynamics of socio-political movements, like I mean, building regenerative communities so they become viral in a positive sense, of course. How do you think, uh, or do you already have a roadmap how to kind of influence on the global dynamics of these socio-political change, socio-political movements?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess I will answer this question in a couple of ways. I think the first thing is we're not trying to, and we're not, Fifth Word doesn't have a mission to actively influence the socio-political world, dynamic. I think what we're doing will end up influencing it in some way, but it's not part of our active mission to actually do that. The second part of my answer has to do more with what we really one of the things we really believe in at Driftwood is bottom-up change, right? And so what this means for us is, can we help people retrofit their houses to become more autonomous and regenerative? Can we help municipalities design their neighborhoods to become autonomous and regenerative? Can we build new villages, new neighborhoods, new cities from scratch that are autonomous and regenerative? And obviously part of that is thinking through the physical part, like how do you build those houses, the energy question, the water question, all of that. Part of it is also thinking through the community part, right? Like who's going to actually be interested to live there, and can we build a community around this concept of people who are interested in it? And what we've seen is that there are people interested in it out of pure lifestyle, right? Like it's a way healthier lifestyle to live in a neighborhood where you're eating, food that are coming, from the farm down the street, which are super organic, super rich in nutrients. Your energy source is super clean. Your water is secure and clean, and all of that. So there's a lifestyle component to it. Even like having access to a farm or a forest park, to go on a walk or on a hike or go biking and so on. And then there's also a number of people that are interested in it more from a resiliency perspective, right? So in terms of they want to be more anti-fragile and resilient in a world where climate volatility is a big thing, and even there's this clear erosion of trust in financial systems and political systems and all of that. And so we believe that if we're successful in doing that and building those houses, those neighborhoods, those communities, ultimately this will usher the world into a more positive future that will influence the state of the socio-political dynamic today. But it's not something we're working directly towards. It's more of, we see it more as an indirect result of the work that we will be doing, and we believe it will be a positive indirect impact from that perspective.
And the last question is about what do you think? What is the main driving force, motivation for people to join these type of movements, forces, communities, and what do you understand when people talk about the sense of belonging? Because I think that is one of the key issues nowadays, especially when in the world we are seeing a very big wave of identity crisis, civilizational breakup. So what do you think? Is that sense of belonging search is a motivating factor, and if not, what is the main factor? I mean, for people
Yeah.
to join these type of communities and movements.
Yeah, great question. I think there are multiple factors. One of them is the sense of belonging, or maybe like a response to the loneliness epidemic, as they call it. And I'll talk a bit more about that. I think there are some other factors, like a lot of people are worried about climate and climate volatility. A lot of people are just they want to be more sovereign, right? In the sense that they feel like they're dependent today on too many centralized systems. And there are solutions that are decentralized by nature that will make you more independent and more sovereign, and some people are interested in that. I would say the majority of people are kind of stuck between two things. Like there is almost this false choice today that basically tells people that if you want to be high tech, you have to think about nature differently. Like you have to use technology to dominate nature, or survive nature. which I guess used to apply like, I don't know, 500 years ago, but it doesn't apply today, anymore. And so the other false choice is that, well, if you want to actually be nature friendly and embrace nature, you have to reject tech, right? And we believe this is a false choice. Like, you can be in the middle, you can be high tech and you can be high nature. And it all comes down to the choices that you make as a community and as a human being. And going back to the, sense of belonging question and the loneliness epidemic thing, I think this is going to become more and more, a bigger crisis as time goes by, because especially right now with the rise of AI and like a very interesting statistics I saw recently, I think it came from ARK Invest, and what the statistics say is that today, on average, people spend 40% of their free time online and 60% in the real world. Not to mention the work hours are pretty much like 90% online, right? And in 10 years, this is going to flip. Like, in 10 years, you're going to have newer generations that are going to be spending 90% of their times online, like the majority of their lives. This is why like things like crypto and data privacy and all of that becomes very relevant. But then also identity becomes relevant. And as humans, we are social animals, right? So digital identity is one piece of our identity, but we still need some form of like physical identity. We still need to have this human interaction and, identify with other people and just have this personal connection. And I think that's going to become more and more needed. And so this is where the communities we're trying to build come into play, in the sense that they enable those forms of relationships, but they also enable you to connect back with nature, right? Because the way we're going to build those things is going to be very kind of nature friendly, like partnering with nature rather than dominating nature. And so in a world where you're spending 90% of your life, inside a VR goggle or, on your laptop, you do want to have the chance to go and sit, in a forest, or touch the ground, or as they say, touch grass, or even like, go on a hike with a friend of yours, or just meet people in person. And I think this need is going to become bigger and bigger as, AI rises and technology, keeps on growing. So yeah, so these are some of the reasons I think people are interested. In my opinion, also, there's like another thing here, which is, as we've noticed, all of us, there's this move for people to like consume more and more organic food, because they are concerned about the food that they eat and their health and all of that. And what we're doing also solves part of that problem, in the sense that, well, instead of going to Whole Foods and buying your groceries, you can actually get a lot of them from this community farm that will be part of the neighborhood where you live, or this greenhouse where you can grow basically any type of food you want regardless of the season. So yeah, these are some of the reasons I think for why people would want that.
Very interesting and very thoughtful intervention. Thanks a lot. And I wish the best
Thank you.
to the fifth world. And I hope that together we are going to make the world a better place. Thanks a
I
lot,
hope so
Mark.
too. Thank you.